Rain whispered across the city like a lullaby for the broken. It was the kind of day that soaked you to the bones, no matter how tightly you gripped your umbrella. Lily Carter didn't mind. The rain made the world softer, quieter, like maybe, for just a moment, the noise of expectations and deadlines could hush beneath the steady rhythm of falling drops. She pulled her cardigan tighter around her frame as she approached the bus stop on 5th and Marlowe. The usual crowd gathered. Wet shoes, damp hair, sighs heavy with the weight of the weekday. She knew most of them by face, if not by name. The grumpy man who always read the sports section. The woman who sang softly under her breath. The teenage boy with headphones far too loud. But today, someone new stood among them. He wasn't dressed for the weather. No umbrella, no jacket, just a gray t-shirt soaked dark, clinging to his chest and arms, and jeans heavy with water. His hair was dark brown, flattened by the storm, and his eyes scanned the screen of his phone with a frustration that bordered on panic. Lily's gaze drifted to his hands. He was patting his pockets, checking again and again, wallet maybe, or keys. The bus groaned as it pulled to a stop, its doors hissing open. The man stepped forward, hesitating as he reached into his back pocket. A few crumpled bills, some change. He counted twice, then looked at the driver. "It's short," the driver said gruffly. "You'll have to wait for the next one." "I just need to get downtown," the man said, voice calm but tired. "I'll pay double tomorrow." The driver shook his head, already motioning to close the door. Without thinking, Lily stepped forward. "I've got it," she said, holding out her Metro card. The driver paused, glanced at the line, then gave a grudging nod. The man turned to her, stunned. "You don't have to. It's just a fare," Lily said with a gentle smile. "You look like you need a break." He met her eyes, and for a brief second, something flickered. Something grateful, something worn. "Thank you," he said quietly, then boarded the bus without another word. They sat on opposite ends, the moment fading into the noise of traffic and city life. When she got off at her stop, he was gone, lost in the shuffle of umbrellas and hurried feet. Lily didn't expect anything to come from it. She didn't do it for attention or reward. It was just instinct, kindness, a reflex in a cold world. That night, she curled up with a book and a blanket, sipping tea by the window as the rain continued to fall. She thought of him once, briefly, then let the thought drift away. Somewhere downtown, a man sat alone in a high-rise apartment, soaked clothes in a pile, a Metro card in his hand. And for the first time in months, Daniel Reed smiled. 3 days passed. The rain let up. The city returned to its usual hum. Horns, footsteps, coffee cups clinking in cafes. Lily's life continued in quiet rhythm. Early shifts at the bookstore cafe, bus rides filled with music and dreams, nights with novels and chamomile tea. The encounter at the bus stop had faded to a warm little memory. Nothing extraordinary, just a moment, until Friday. She was behind the counter folding paper sleeves around hot drinks when she noticed the TV in the corner. Usually, it played muted travel shows or morning news segments that no one paid attention to. But this time, something caught her eye. The camera focused on a man walking briskly through a crowd of reporters, shielding his face with a hood. A name flashed at the bottom of the screen. Daniel Reed. "Isn't that the tech guy who disappeared a while back?" one of the customers asked, eyes glued to the screen. "Yeah," another said. "Built that AI thing. Cashed out before the crash. Weird story." Lily's hands froze mid-fold. She turned to the TV just as the news segment played a still photo of him. Dry, clean-shaven, suited. But it was him. The same eyes. The same jaw. The man from the bus. The one she helped. After years of silence, Daniel Reed, once hailed as the genius behind Aurora Tech's revolutionary AI systems, has resurfaced in his hometown, the anchor was saying. Reed, 29, vanished from public life following a sudden withdrawal from his company and a string of financial shakeups that left investors furious. While no official charges were ever brought against him, his silence fueled speculation. A clip played next, Reed at some conference years ago, speaking confidently, surrounded by applause. Then a more recent photo, blurry and clearly taken without consent. Him entering a nondescript building, looking weathered and withdrawn. "He looks different now," Lily whispered. "Wouldn't you after a billion-dollar scandal?" Someone muttered. Lily's heart thumped in her chest. She tried to shake the feeling, tried to convince herself it couldn't really be him. Maybe she was mistaken. Maybe she wanted it to be him, to make the memory feel more important than it was. But she knew faces. She remembered kindness and pain. His eyes carried both that day at the bus stop, and they carried both on that screen. After her shift, she couldn't stop thinking about it. She took the long way home, walking instead of riding the bus, letting the late afternoon sun warm her thoughts. The city felt different now, less familiar, less still. Somewhere out there, walking these same streets, was a man with a past heavy enough to make headlines, and a face kind enough to thank her softly for a moment of compassion. That night, she did something she rarely did. She Googled him. There were endless results, articles, videos, gossip pieces, think pieces. They called him brilliant, eccentric, reckless. Some claimed he was sabotaged by a former partner. Others suggested he faked his downfall to escape corporate pressure. A few even praised him for walking away before the company spiraled. She clicked through photos, stopping at one taken on a rooftop, back when Aurora Tech first launched. He was smiling, confident, the kind of man who owned every room he entered. But that wasn't the man she met. The man at the bus stop looked like he'd lost something, or someone, like the world had chewed him up and left him hollowed. And still, he'd thanked her like she had given him more than just a bus fare, as if it had meant something deeper. She shut her laptop and sat in silence. A part of her felt silly, getting caught up in a moment. But another part, the quiet part that believed in timing and fate, whispered that maybe it hadn't been a coincidence. The next morning was cool and bright. Lily made her usual coffee, boarded her usual bus, and watched the city pass in golden streaks of sunlight. She told herself to forget him, that he belonged to a world too far from hers. Scandals, millions, technology, boardrooms. She was just Lily, bookstore girl, dreamer, nobody special. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Because when she walked into the cafe that afternoon, Daniel Reed was standing at the counter. He wasn't in a suit, no bodyguards, just jeans, a soft navy sweater, and the same eyes, clearer now, less clouded by rain or exhaustion. He held a takeout menu in one hand and looked up just as the door chimed. Their eyes met. Neither spoke for a beat. "You," he said quietly. "You?" She echoed, breath-catching. A small smile tugged at his lips. "I owe you a coffee, at the very least." She stammered, then laughed nervously. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." "Neither did I," he said. "But I've been trying to find you. I didn't even know your name." She stepped behind the counter slowly, her heart thudding. "It's Lily." "Daniel," he replied, though clearly she already knew. "Lily Carter." She raised an eyebrow. "You looked me up?" He looked sheepish. "Not exactly. I went back to that bus route. Waited a few times. Asked around. Then I saw you through the window here yesterday. Took a gamble walking in today." She blinked. "You really came looking for me?" He nodded. "Most people, they don't do what you did. They don't look up and see someone who needs a moment of grace." A silence settled between them, soft, charged, electric. Lily smiled. "Well, I guess I do." Daniel exhaled, almost in relief. "Can I buy you that coffee now?" And just like that, something began. Not with flowers. Not with grand gestures. Just two people standing across a counter, finding something rare in a city of millions. A second chance. A new chapter. Something changed after that coffee. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't flashy. It was quiet, like the way a song shifts keys so gently you don't notice until your heart feels it. Daniel came by the cafe again 2 days later, this time just before closing. Lily was wiping down tables when she saw his reflection in the window. He didn't speak at first, just waited for her to look up. When she did, he smiled. That night they walked, down streets still damp from spring showers. past rows of lit-up windows and quiet bookstores. They talked about simple things. Music, movies, how the city felt smaller at night. Lily shared stories from her childhood. Daniel shared almost nothing, but it didn't feel one-sided. He listened, not politely, not half-heartedly, but fully, as if every word mattered. "I've never met someone like you," he said, standing outside her apartment building later that night. "It's like, you remind me that the world isn't all sharp edges." She blushed but held his gaze. "Maybe you just needed to see a softer corner." They didn't kiss. Not yet, but something passed between them. Undeniable, unspoken. Over the next week, their lives began to intertwine. Daniel invited her to walk through the botanical gardens on a cloudy afternoon. He didn't wear designer clothes or act like a billionaire. In fact, he rarely mentioned money at all. He seemed more interested in naming flowers and watching ducks than talking about his company. But the questions grew louder in Lily's mind. Why had he disappeared for so long? What really happened with Aurora Tech? She didn't ask, afraid she'd ruin whatever fragile magic had begun. One evening, he brought her to a rooftop above an old library. There was no skyline view, just cracked tiles, a single bench, and a soft breeze. "This is where I used to go when everything felt too loud," he told her. "Even when I had everything, I didn't feel anything." Lily sat beside him, watching the sky turn amber. "Do you feel anything now?" she asked softly. He looked at her then, and his voice dropped. Every second, she leaned her head on his shoulder. For the first time in years, he looked peaceful. But reality has a cruel sense of timing. That weekend, Lily noticed something strange. It started with the man in the gray car parked across from the cafe. She saw him 2 mornings in a row staring inside. Not a customer, not lost, just watching. Later that day, her phone buzzed with an anonymous message. "Be careful who you trust." She stared at the screen, her stomach twisting. When she looked up, the car was gone. She didn't tell Daniel. Not yet. Instead, she tried to bury the unease. She reminded herself that she barely knew him, that whatever happened with Aurora Tech wasn't her business. But the city seemed darker now. The quiet corners didn't feel safe. Still, she couldn't stay away. When Daniel took her to a hidden jazz bar beneath a laundromat, they danced slowly, surrounded by old records and strangers' laughter. "You make things feel light again," he whispered against her ear, and she believed him. Until the next morning, Lily woke up to chaos. Her phone was buzzing nonstop, news alerts, missed calls from coworkers. When she opened one of the links, her blood ran cold. Aurora Tech scandal reignites. Sources claim Daniel Reed paid off whistleblower. Beneath the headline was a blurry photo. Daniel, taken just days ago, walking out of her cafe. Her cafe. Her name wasn't mentioned, but the article hinted at a woman linked to his sudden reappearance. Lily's hands shook as she closed the window. Within minutes, someone knocked on her door. It was her boss, stern-faced, holding a manila envelope. "You didn't tell us you were involved with him," he said, voice low. "We're getting calls. People are asking questions." We're not," she stammered. "Take a few days. Let things cool down." She stood frozen as he walked away. That night, she finally called Daniel. He didn't pick up. She tried again and again. No answer. She paced her apartment, trying to piece it all together. Had he lied to her? Had he used her as a cover? Was any of it real? Finally, just before midnight, a knock. She opened the door to find him there, exhausted, drenched from the rain again. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he said, his voice raw. She stepped aside silently, and he walked in. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then he sat on her couch, head in his hands. "It's not what it looks like." "Then tell me what it is, Daniel," she said, her voice trembling. He looked up at her. "They're trying to bury me. I walked away from something powerful, too powerful. And now, someone I trusted is feeding lies to the media. Someone I once called a friend." She sat across from him. "And me? What am I in all this?" He met her gaze. "You're the only real thing I've had in years." Her heart twisted. "I don't know what's true anymore," she whispered. He reached for her hand. "This is." For a moment, the storm outside was nothing compared to the one inside her chest. She pulled her hand away gently. "I need time. I understand." He stood, eyes heavy with regret. "But I'll wait, however long it takes." And just like that, he was gone again. Lily stood at her window long after he left, watching the city shimmer under the rain. She thought of his words, "You're the only real thing I've had," and wondered if she had the strength to trust again. Because love, like rain, doesn't ask for permission. It just fall. Lily didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, eyes wide open, listening to the rain pound against her window like a warning. She kept replaying Daniel's voice in her mind. "They're trying to bury me." But how could she know what was true? The news kept spiraling, each headline sharper than the last. Whistleblower disappears amid new allegations. Daniel Reed's sudden reappearance raises questions. The cafe girl, innocent bystander or hidden partner? That last one made her nauseous. She didn't leave her apartment the next day. Her phone rang constantly. Friends, reporters, even people claiming to be lawyers. She didn't answer a single call. She wanted to scream. Was this her punishment for a moment of kindness? By evening, she forced herself outside. Hoodie up, head down. She walked through back alleys until she reached a place that had once calmed her. The old park bench beneath the elms. She sat there for over an hour, lost in thought. Then a shadow appeared. Daniel. She didn't flinch, but her hands clenched. "I didn't follow you," he said quickly. "I just hoped this is where you'd go." She stayed silent. He stepped closer. "Lily, I need you to know the truth." She finally looked up, her voice thin. "I'm listening." And he told her everything. Aurora Tech hadn't just been a company. It had been an empire of surveillance technology. Software powerful enough to track voices, faces, even thoughts through patterns of digital behavior. At first, it had been about safety, stopping cyber attacks, preventing terrorism. But then governments came knocking, and not all of them had noble intentions. Daniel's business partner, Noah Chandler, had made a deal with a foreign agency. He'd sold off the software's core code without Daniel's consent. When Daniel found out, he tried to shut everything down. Resigned, disappeared. But Chandler spun a different story, claiming Daniel had taken hush money, paid off whistleblowers, and abandoned the company in disgrace. "And now," Daniel said, "he's trying to destroy what little I have left, and that includes you." Lily's stomach dropped. "What do you mean, me?" Daniel hesitated. "The leak about you being linked to me? That wasn't an accident. Chandler knew about you. He's trying to discredit you, make it look like you're part of something you never chose." She rose from the bench, overwhelmed. "So I was just a weak spot? A vulnerability?" "No," he stepped forward. "You are a miracle. You're the reason I even had the courage to come back. But why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I didn't want to pull you into this. You've lived a quiet, beautiful life. I didn't want my darkness staining it." Tears burned behind her eyes. Too late. They didn't speak for a long time after that. Then Lily asked, almost in a whisper, "What are you going to do now?" Daniel looked broken for a moment. "I don't know. I've lost everything that matters." She stared at him. "Then fight. Not just for you. For the people he's hurt. For what's right." His eyes met hers, sharp, tired, but alive. "Even if I lose you?" She hesitated. "Maybe you don't have to." Then she walked away, not because she was angry, but because she needed space to decide. Back at home, she pulled out a journal she hadn't touched in years. She wrote one line, "Maybe loving someone isn't about saving them, but reminding them they're worth saving." She closed the journal and, for the first time since it all began, she slept. The next morning, everything changed. Daniel went public. He released a 20-minute video, recorded in a quiet room, no edits, no lawyers, just him. He told the entire story, names, dates, documents. He showed the trail of betrayal, the contracts, even the final boardroom vote that pushed him out. The world watched. The internet erupted. By midday, Daniel Reed was trending globally, not as a villain, but as a whistleblower. People started calling him brave, a martyr for transparency. And through it all, Lily stayed silent, until the final message arrived. It was a voice note, Daniel's voice. No music, no fancy production, just words. Lily, if you hear this, I want you to know something. I didn't come back to fix my company. I came back to find something I lost long ago, my belief in goodness. And I found it in you. I understand if this is goodbye, but if there's any part of you that still believes in us, I'll be waiting. Same rooftop. Tonight. Midnight. She listened twice, then a third time, and something cracked open in her chest. She stood in front of the mirror, heart racing. For once, she didn't care how she looked. No makeup, no heels, just herself. Because if this was goodbye, it would be honest. But maybe, just maybe, it would be something else. She took the stairs 2 at a time, the wind sharp, her lungs burning with hope. And when she stepped onto that rooftop, Daniel was there, looking up at the stars, hands in his pockets, as if afraid she wouldn't come. He turned. Their eyes met. He took 1 step. She took 2. And in the silence between heartbeats, they fell into each other's arms. Not because everything was fixed, not because all the pain was gone, but because when raindrops fall, they don't ask if the world is ready. They just fall. The rooftop was silent except for their breathing. Lily's cheek rested against Daniel's chest, his arms holding her like he never wanted to let go again. Above them, the stars blinked gently through a clearing sky, as if the storm that had haunted them was finally fading. But even as they stood in each other's arms, the question lingered in both their minds. What now? Lily pulled back slightly, just enough to look into his eyes. Is it over? Daniel exhaled. Not entirely. There's an investigation now. Chandler will face charges. But it won't be quick. She nodded slowly. And you? He smiled faintly, weary. I'll be testifying, probably rebuilding what's left of my name. But I'm not going to disappear again. That mattered. Not just to the public, but to her. She touched his cheek, brushing away the worry written there. You don't have to be perfect, Daniel. You just have to be real. His voice cracked. I'm scared. She smiled. So am I. And that was enough. For now. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Lily's life turned upside down again. But in a different way. She wasn't hounded by the press anymore. Instead, people reached out with kindness. Strangers who'd watched Daniel's video and seen the part she played in his return. They called her brave, humble, honest. Lily Carter, the girl who paid a bus fare in the rain, had somehow become a symbol of something quietly extraordinary. Daniel, meanwhile, kept his promise. He met with investigators, submitted every file, spoke with former employees, and publicly apologized to the people hurt along the way, even for the mistakes he hadn't made but could have prevented. He never once tried to make himself the hero. He simply owned his truth. And through it all, he and Lily met in the in-between moments. Late nights at her apartment, early mornings over black coffee and quiet smiles. They didn't need fancy dinners or grand declarations. They had honesty and peace, and the slow, careful rebuilding of something worth keeping. One night, as autumn folded into winter, Daniel showed up at Lily's door with a small envelope. She opened it, puzzled. Inside was a photograph, grainy, clearly taken by security camera footage. It showed her at the bus stop months ago, standing in the rain, holding out a crumpled bill toward a man who looked down and out. Daniel, I tracked down the footage, he said quietly. I needed to see it again, not for proof, but because that moment saved me. She looked up at him, the corners of her mouth trembling. I didn't do anything special. You didn't have to. That's what made it extraordinary. He stepped closer. I don't know what the future looks like, Lily. I don't know how long this battle will last. But I do know one thing. I don't want to walk through it without you. Her voice wavered. You won't have to. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a key. Not a ring. Not a vow. Just a key. To my place, in case you ever feel like staying. No pressure. Just the possibility. She took it, not because she needed it, but because for the first time in her life she wanted to choose someone, and be chosen back without conditions. The next morning, they walked together through the city, hand in hand. No disguises, no cameras, just two people who had lived through the chaos and come out on the other side. A street musician played something soft on a corner. The sky was pale blue, the wind crisp but kind. They paused at the same bus stop where it all began. Daniel looked at it, then at her. "Funny," he said. "I used to think fate was a myth. And now," he smiled, "now I think fate shows up when you're drenched, broken, and out of coins." Lily laughed. A real, deep, bright laugh that shook the cold from the air. And as they stood there, strangers passed, buses rolled by, life went on. But for Lily Carter and Daniel Reed, two souls caught in a storm, the rain had finally passed. What remained was something gentle, real, and ready to grow. Together.
If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to the channel. We need your support.
Better stories are yet to come.